Cogitator accelerationation. Data slate fragment recovered from debris field. Coordinates redacted by inquisitorial decree. Source designation: Void Master Cornelius Vane, Rogue Trader Vessel Merchant's Providence. Recovery date: 009 M35.001. Warning. Temporal markers corrupted. Warning. Mnemonic integrity compromised. By the grace of the God Emperor and the mercy of the Omnissiah, let this testimony be preserved. Play-up commencing. My name is Cornelius Vane, Void Master of the Merchant's Providence, bearer of the warrant of trade issued to the House of Vane in the name of the God Emperor of mankind. What I am about to relay may be my final testimony. The chronometer reads the 347th day of our voyage into the Ghoul Stars, but I no longer trust such instruments. Time has become negotiable here, flexible. I have watched the same hour pass 3 times, each iteration subtly different from the last. The ship's bell rang 23 times this morning, though a day contains only 24 hours by Imperial reckoning. We entered this accursed region in pursuit of archaeotech, following fragmentary coordinates purchased at great expense from a half-mad cartographist on footfall, Lord Captain Hadrian Vane, my cousin and commander of this expedition, believed we might claim salvage rights to a Dark Age colony world, untouched for 15,000 years. The potential profits were extraordinary. Enough to restore our house's fortunes after the disastrous loss of 3 cargo vessels to Eldar corsairs in the Coronis Expanse. Profits. The word tastes like ashes now. The first sign that something was wrong came when we translated from the Immaterium into this system. I have served aboard void ships for 37 standard years. I have witnessed the howling chaos of the warp 1,000 times, watched the Geller field strain against entities that should not exist. But this was different. The transition was smooth, too smooth. No turbulence, no sense of the crushing pressure that accompanies re-entry into real space. Navigator Isadora simply looked up from her charts, her third eye weeping blood as always after a warp translation, and said in a voice like breaking glass, "We have arrived, but the destination does not want us. The system contains 7 planets orbiting a dying star. That is what our Auspex arrays told us, at least. But when I looked through the observation dome, what I saw defied such simple categorization. The star itself was the color of bruised flesh, radiating light that seemed to fall upward rather than outward. It cast illumination, yes, but the shadows it created were wrong. They moved independently of their sources. They pooled in corners where no corners should exist. And the light itself. Emperor, protect us. The light was cold. I do not mean metaphorically cold. I mean that standing in the direct radiance of that sun, I could see my breath misting before me. Ice formed on the interior hull plating. The temperature dropped 17 degrees in the observation gallery, despite the environmental systems operating at full capacity. Tech Priest Hadron assured me the heating arrays were functioning perfectly. When I pressed him, he simply stared at me with his augmetic eyes and said, "The machine spirits are confused. They taste something in the light that their protocols cannot process. It is not heat, not radiation, something else. Something the ancients never programmed them to recognize. Lord Captain Vane ordered us to proceed in system regardless. The Auspex had detected structures on the fourth planet, massive constructions that could only be artificial. Our charter demanded investigation. The warrant of trade is not merely a license for commerce. It is a sacred duty to expand the boundaries of the Imperium, to claim lost worlds in the Emperor's name. We had come too far to turn back because of atmospheric anomalies and malfunctioning temperature sensors. That was our first mistake. The voyage inward took 3 days by the chronometer, but subjectively it felt like months. The crew began to report strange dreams. Not the nightmares common to warp travel, those visions that plague even the best shielded vessels, but something worse, something more subtle. Armsman Petrock told me he dreamed of walking through the ship's corridors and finding rooms that should not exist, chambers filled with impossible geometries and angles that hurt to contemplate. Servitor handler Mila woke screaming, claiming she had dreamed she was a servitor herself, lobotomized and grateful for her holy mutilation. Cook's mate Jensen said he dreamed the same dream every night, standing before the observation dome, watching the cold sun, feeling it watch him back. I dismissed these reports initially. Dreams are common aboard void ships. The human mind struggles with the emptiness of space, the crushing isolation, the knowledge that only thin metal and prayer stand between flesh and the infinite cold. But then, I had my own dream. I was in my quarters, reviewing supply manifests, when I noticed my shadow on the wall. It was standing at a different angle than I was. As I watched, it turned to face me directly. Though I had not moved, it raised one hand in what might have been a greeting or a warning. Then it stepped away from the wall and walked out through my sealed cabin door. I woke to find myself standing in the corridor outside my quarters, dressed only in my sleeping garments, my feet bleeding from walking barefoot on the cold deck plating. I had no memory of leaving my bed. That was when I began to understand we were not dealing with mere astronomical anomalies. On the fourth day, we achieved orbit around the planet we had designated as Target Prime. It was a dead world atmosphere, long since boiled away by solar radiation, surface scarred by impacts and tectonic upheaval. But the structures remained, great spires of black metal rising from cratered plains, each 1 kilometer tall, arranged in patterns that hurt the eye to follow. They seemed to shift when I looked away and looked back, their positions subtly altered, their angles impossible to reconcile with Euclidean geometry. Navigator Isadora refused to observe them directly. She kept her third eye tightly bound and would not approach the observation galleries. When Lord Captain Vane demanded an explanation, she said simply, "The stars are looking back." They have been looking back since we entered this system. Those structures below are not architecture. They are eyes, and they see us. The Lord Captain struck her for this blasphemy. Struck a navigator whose bloodline is sacred, whose gift allows humanity to traverse the warp. I should have recognized this as another sign. Hadrian Vane was many things. A hard man, a ruthless traitor, a distant cousin I barely knew, but he was not cruel without cause. The blow was unlike him. When I met his eyes afterward, I saw something that chilled me worse than the cold light of that hateful sun. His pupils were rectangular, like a goat's, like something that should not exist in a human skull. They returned to normal when he blinked, and I convinced myself I had imagined it. But I know what I saw. We deployed survey teams to the surface. 6 armsmen, led by Sergeant Krell, equipped with void suits and portable Auspex units. Their mission was simple: document the structures, gather samples if possible, return within 8 hours. Standard procedure for exploration of potentially hostile environments. They never came back. Their Vox transmissions lasted for approximately 90 minutes. The first hour was routine. Atmospheric readings, surface composition analysis, distance measurements of the nearest spire. Then Trooper Hastings reported that his shadow was missing. He could see the shadows of his companions, could see the long black pools of darkness cast by the spires under that flesh-colored sun. But his own shadow was gone. He was standing in full light, and he cast no shadow at all. 3 minutes later, Corporal Vex reported the same phenomenon. Then Sergeant Krell. Within 10 minutes, the entire team had lost their shadows. Their voices over the Vox remained calm, professional, but I could hear the underlying tension. These were hardened Void soldiers, men who had fought orcs and pirates and worse. And they were afraid. The last transmission came from Hastings. His voice was very quiet, very controlled. He said, "Voidmaster, we can see them now. The shadows, they're not gone. They're just separate. They're standing together about 50 meters from our position. All 6 of them, watching us. Sir, our shadows are watching us, and they're not moving when we move." Then screaming, sustained, agonized screaming that lasted for 47 seconds before cutting off abruptly. We attempted to re-establish contact for 3 hours. Nothing. Only static, and, occasionally, something that might have been breathing on the open channel. Lord Captain Vane ordered an immediate withdrawal from orbit, but the ship did not respond correctly. The plasma drives ignited, yes, but our trajectory was wrong. Tech Priest Hadron ran diagnostics for 6 hours, finding nothing amiss with the propulsion systems, the navigational cogitators, or the guidance arrays. Every system reported optimal function. Yet when I checked our position against the star charts, we had moved less than 1,000 kilometers. We had burned enough fuel to achieve escape velocity, and we had barely moved at all. "The geometry is wrong," Hadron said finally, his voice flat and emotionless as always, though I thought I detected a tremor in his augmetic vocal synthesizer. Space-time curvature in this region does not match predicted values. Distance has become unreliable. We may be moving exactly as the engines indicate, but the space we are moving through is not behaving according to standard physical laws. I asked him what could cause such a phenomenon. He was silent for a long moment, his mechadendrites twitching in what I had learned to recognize as agitation. Finally, he said, Only a god could reshape space itself, or something that thinks it is a god. That night, the manifestations began in earnest. Crewman Dask reported that the corridor outside his bunk had become 100 meters longer. He had walked it 1,000 times. He knew its length exactly. But now it stretched away into impossible distance, the far end visible but unreachable. When other crew members investigated, they found the corridor normal length. But Dask refused to walk it again. He took to sleeping in the cargo bay, muttering prayers to the Emperor and weeping silently. The ship's geometry was changing. Slowly at first, then with increasing frequency. Rooms would be where they had always been, but their dimensions would be subtly wrong. The bridge was too tall, the ceiling lost in shadows that should not exist under electric illumination. The engine decks were too narrow, forcing servitors to walk single file through spaces that had once accommodated 3 abreast. The observation galleries multiplied. I counted 17 of them during one sleepless patrol of the ship, though the Merchant's Providence had been constructed with only 4. And everywhere the shadows moved independently. I watched a servitor shamble past its shadow, remaining stationary on the wall behind it. I saw Armsman Petrock run screaming through the mess deck, pursued by his own silhouette, which had grown teeth and claws and hunger. I found Cook's maid Jensen standing motionless in the galley, staring at the wall where his shadow was eating something. When I asked what it was consuming, he said without turning, "Itself. It's eating itself, and it's smiling." Navigator Isadora locked herself in her sanctum and refused to emerge. I could hear her weeping through the sealed door, reciting litanies of protection and prayers to the Emperor. When Tech Priest Hadron attempted to override the lock, she screamed, "Don't let it see me. The light sees everything. The cold light that hates. It knows my name. It knows all our names. We were named in the dark places between stars, and now it's calling us home." I reported all of this to Lord Captain Vane. He listened in silence, standing before the viewport in his private cabin, staring out at that bruised flesh sun. When I finished, he said quietly, "We cannot leave. I have tried. I have given the orders. The ship will not obey, so we remain." I asked if we should attempt to contact the Imperium, send out a distress signal, warn others away from this cursed system. He turned to face me, and I saw that his eyes were wrong again. Not merely the pupils, but the entire structure of his gaze. His eyes were too large, too dark, and they reflected no light at all. They were holes in his face, openings onto some vast emptiness. "There is no Imperium here," he said, his voice layered with harmonics that hurt my ears. "There is no Emperor. There is only the sun that remembers what it was before light was tamed, before the ancients forced fusion to serve them. It remembers the cold void, the darkness before stars, and it hates the theft of its nature. It hates that it was made to burn, so it burns cold now. It burns with spite. I drew my last pistol, but he was faster. His hand, when it struck me, was ice cold and impossibly strong. I woke in the Medicaid Bay 3 hours later with fractured ribs and no memory of how I got there. The ship is dying, not in the conventional sense of mechanical failure or hull breach. It is dying because reality itself is rejecting it. The walls weep condensation that burns when touched. The deck plating has developed a pulse, a slow, rhythmic throbbing that matches no heartbeat I recognize. The air tastes of copper and ozone, and something else, something that has no name in any human language. Servitors have begun to malfunction in horrifying ways. Their organic components are rejecting their mechanical augmentations, flesh growing over circuitry, biological matter consuming sacred technology. I watched a gun servitor tear its own arm-mounted cannon free, screaming in binary code, its Vox synthesizer wailing prayers to the Omnicia as blood and oil poured from the wound. The arm continued to fire autonomously for 17 minutes after separation, targeting shadows on the walls. The crew was down to 37 souls from an original complement of 214. Some are dead, killed by the manifestations or by their own hands. Others are simply gone, vanished into corridors that lead nowhere, into rooms that exist in one moment and not the next. I found Armsman Kellis, standing in a storage locker, facing the wall, whispering to his shadow. When I called his name, he turned, and I saw that his face had been replaced by a perfect mirror of darkness. He spoke with my voice, said, "I am going into the light now. The cold light. It is beautiful there. It is so very beautiful, and it knows me, and I am not afraid anymore." Then he walked through the solid wall and was gone. I have tried to maintain discipline, tried to keep the remaining crew focused on survival. But how? Do you survive when the ship itself is turning against you? When the very space you occupy is becoming hostile to human existence? Tech Priest Hadron has proposed that we are experiencing a localized reality breakdown, that the structures on the planet below are generating some form of field that rewrites the fundamental constants of physics. He believes they are weapons from the dark age of technology, left behind by a civilization that had learned to weaponize space-time itself. I think he is wrong. I think what we are experiencing is not a weapon, but a statement. A declaration from something vast and old and utterly inhuman, that we are not welcome in this place, that we never were. That this region of space belongs to something that predates humanity, predates the Imperium, perhaps predates the very concept of matter and energy as we understand them. The sun watches us. I am certain of this now. When I look at it through the observation dome, I can feel its attention pressing against my mind, like a physical weight. It is aware. It is conscious, and it despises us with a cold, eternal hatred that makes the fury of the warp seem like a child's tantrum. Yesterday, if yesterday has any meaning anymore, I found Navigator Isadora dead in her sanctum. She had removed her warp eye bandages and stared directly at the sun until her brain hemorrhaged. The walls of her chamber were covered in writing, thousands upon thousands of words scratched into the metal with her own fingernails. The same phrase repeated endlessly. The light remembers the dark. The light remembers the dark. The light remembers the dark. Her warp eye had turned to ice. Literally frozen solid. A perfect spear of crystalline water where her third eye should have been. When Tech Priest Hadron examined the body, he found that her blood had been replaced with something else. A clear fluid that reflected no light at all. It absorbed illumination, drank it in, made darkness out of radiance. Lord Captain Vane has not left his quarters in 4 days. I can hear him talking to someone through the door, having long conversations in a language I do not recognize. Sometimes I hear 2 voices, sometimes 3, sometimes a chorus. The door is sealed, locked from the inside, and he will not respond to vox hails or physical pounding. I am afraid to break down the door. I am afraid of what I will find on the other side. The shadows are becoming more aggressive. They no longer merely observe. They reach out. They touch. Crewman Husk was pulled into his own shadow yesterday, dragged down into the deck plating as if it were water, his screams echoing up from below for hours afterward, growing fainter and more distant, as if he were falling through infinite depths of solid metal. The remaining crew have taken to carrying lanterns, portable lumens, anything that produces light. But the shadows find them anyway. Light does not drive them back here. If anything, light creates them, gives them definition, makes them real. We are discovering that darkness might be safer. In the dark, the shadows cannot exist, but none of us have the courage to extinguish all the lights and see if this theory holds. I attempted to access the ship's archive cogitators to search for any reference to phenomena like this in the histories of the Ghoul Stars. The archives are corrupt. Every data slate I access contains the same information, star charts that show our position. But the charts are wrong. They show the Merchant's Providence not in orbit around a planet, but inside the sun itself. Inside the cold, hateful star. The cogitators insist we have been there for 3,000 years, that we never left, that we were always here, burning cold and learning to hate. I think they might be right. Time is collapsing. I experience the same moments repeatedly, but with variations. I have written this log 17 times now. Each time, the details change slightly. Sometimes Navigator Isadora is still alive. Sometimes the crew complement is larger, sometimes smaller. Sometimes I am alone on the ship, the last living soul, recording a testimony that no one will ever hear. But always, always, the sun watches, and always it is cold. Tech Priest Hadron came to me this morning. I say morning, but there is no day and night anymore. Only the endless cold radiance of that flesh-colored star. He stood before me, his augmetics gleaming in the wrong light, and said in his flat, emotionless voice, I have calculated our trajectory. We are not in orbit. We are falling. We have been falling since we arrived. Not toward the planet, toward the sun. The mathematics are clear. We will reach the photosphere in approximately 17 hours. I asked him why the Auspex arrays showed us in stable orbit. He tilted his head, mechadendrites writhing. Because the sun is lying to us. It is showing us what we expect to see. It is kind that way. It does not want us to be afraid as we fall. It wants us to understand, to accept, to welcome the cold. Then he walked away, and I noticed that his shadow remained standing before me, motionless, watching me with eyeless regard. I am alone now. I think. The ship is silent except for the throbbing of the deck plates and the distant sound of something breathing in the ventilation systems. I have not seen another living crew member in what feels like days. The corridors stretch into infinity in all directions. I walked for 6 hours yesterday, trying to reach the bridge, and found myself back in my own quarters without ever turning around. My shadow is gone. I cannot remember when I lost it. I stand in the full light of that hateful sun, and I cast no darkness at all. I am becoming transparent, insubstantial. A ghost haunting my own ship, but I am not afraid anymore. That is the strangest thing. The terror that gripped me for so long has faded, replaced by a curious calm, an understanding. The sun does not hate us personally. It hates what we represent. Order, structure, heat, life. It is the opposite of all these things, and our presence here is an insult to its nature. It is teaching us. Slowly, patiently, it is teaching us what it means to be cold, to be empty, to be light that does not warm, but only reveals the darkness within all things. I found Lord Captain Vane today. He was standing in the observation gallery, naked, his skin pale as ice. He did not turn when I approached. He simply said, Look at it, Cornelius. Really look. Stop fighting it. Stop trying to make sense of it with your tiny, frightened human mind. Just look." I looked. The sun is not a star. It never was. It is an opening, a wound in reality, where something vast and incomprehensible pressed through from the other side. The structures on the planet below are not architecture. They are stitches, holding the wound closed, preventing the thing on the other side from emerging fully. But the stitches are old, ancient, and they are failing. What lies beyond is not chaos, not the warp, not any force or entity known to the Imperium or its enemies. It is something older, something that existed before existence itself, a vast, cold intelligence that remembers when there was no light, no matter, no time. It remembers the void before creation, and it wants to return to that state. It is patient. It has waited for billions of years. It can wait billions more. But when ships like ours stumble into its domain, it takes the opportunity to learn about us. To study the strange, hot, brief creatures that have infested the universe. To understand what we are, so that it can more efficiently unmake us when the time comes. We are specimens, insects pinned to a board, and the sun is the lens through which we are examined. Lord Captain Vane turned to face me. His eyes were gone entirely now, replaced by windows onto that vast, cold darkness. He smiled, and his teeth were made of ice. It is beautiful, Cornelius. It is so very beautiful. And it knows us. It has always known us. We were born from its substance. Matter and energy stolen from the primal void. We are its children, and it wants us back. He walked toward me, arms outstretched, and I ran. Ran through corridors that twisted and folded, through rooms that existed in impossible configurations, pursued by my captain, and by shadows that were no longer my own. I ran until I reached this chamber, this small storage locker on a deck I do not recognize, and sealed the door behind me. I am recording this on a portable data slate, the only equipment I have. The battery indicator shows 17% remaining. When it dies, this record will be lost unless someone finds it. Unless someone stumbles into this cursed system and discovers the derelict merchant's providence, drifting in orbit around a cold sun, crewed by shadows and ice. If you are hearing this, if you have found this testimony, then you are in terrible danger. Leave immediately. Do not investigate the structures on the planet below. Do not look directly at the sun. Do not trust your shadows. And above all, do not stay. This place is not meant for human beings. It is not meant for life of any kind. The Ghoul Stars earned their name. There are things here that should not be disturbed. Things that predate the Imperium, predate humanity, predate the very concept of stars and light. We thought we were explorers, claiming new territory in the Emperor's name. But we were trespassers in a domain that has no use for emperors, or names, or any of the conceits of civilized beings. The door is shaking now. Something is trying to get in. I can hear breathing on the other side. Slow and deep and unutterably cold. I can see shadows gathering under the door frame, pooling like liquid darkness. They are patient. They know I have nowhere to go. The data slate battery is at 9%. I do not have much time. To whoever finds this, tell the Imperium. Tell the Inquisition. Quarantine the Ghoul Stars. Mark them as forbidden space. Shoot down any ship that attempts to enter this region. Better to lose a few curious explorers than to risk waking what sleeps here. Than to risk drawing its attention to the wider galaxy. The sun is not merely a local phenomenon. It is a symptom, a sign that the ancient stitches holding reality together are failing. There are more of these wounds scattered throughout the Ghoul Stars, perhaps throughout the galaxy. Places where the void before creation is pressing through, where the cold light shines, where shadows learn to hate their masters. 3% battery remaining. The breathing is louder now. The door is buckling. I can feel the temperature dropping. Ice forming on the walls, on my hands, on the data slate itself. I am not afraid. That is the strangest part. I should be terrified, but instead, I feel only a profound calm, an acceptance. The cold has seeped into my bones, into my thoughts, and it is teaching me what Lord Captain Vane learned, what the Navigator learned, what the entire crew learned, one by one. We are returning to the void. We are going home. The Emperor protects, they say, but the Emperor's light cannot reach this place. This is where light comes to die, where it learns to be cold, where it learns to. Battery critical. Recording will terminate in 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2. By the grace of the Omnissiah, let this testimony be preserved. Let it stand as warning to